Here to discuss the implications is Michael O'Hanlon, Director of Research for Foreign Policy at the Brookings Institution. All right, Michael, so the larger picture here, I guess, the whole world is curious, and I don't know how seriously to take this talk of Trump wanting to win a Nobel Prize, but the idea of, is he going to give in to Russia's demands now or try to extract more or dangle them as a carrot for some kind of ceasefire? So with that in the backdrop, what do you make of what we've heard from this call today?
Greetings. Well, I think I share some of the skepticism and concern in the way you asked the question. Certainly, I'm impressed that we're even this far. And I'll give President Trump credit that I think he is rightly prioritizing a ceasefire, recognizing neither side's going to achieve maximalist goals on the battlefield. But he also has to now stand by Ukraine and make sure that in any ceasefire, Ukraine can rearm, can strengthen its economy, and can have some kind of outside backstop from Europe and or the United States, not necessarily NATO membership, but some way to ensure Russia won't just attack again after rearming. And moreover, I think Vladimir Putin may just be playing for time. He may have these nice conversations and say, well, yeah, sure, I want a ceasefire too, but after one or two or three more things, and those one or two or three more things will always take a few more weeks or months, and by the end of the year, we'll see Russia in greater control of more territory and still having been talking about a ceasefire for many months. That's the danger. So it's going to be important to keep up the pressure. I think President Trump's right about that, too, to try to see some urgency in the situation. But again, the odds are still against him. What
incentives does Putin have for a ceasefire at this point? What do you think the international community can offer? Or is it a war of attrition, which he apparently thinks he has the upper hand right now, but evidently they think perhaps at some point that will change? And how would you say the energy piece of this factors in as we watch the price of oil jumping around today?
Right. Well, Russia does have the upper hand, I think, in terms of battlefield momentum, in terms of demographics, just a larger population than Ukraine by a factor of 4, and in terms of economic recovery, where it's managed to keep its GDP even a little above where it had been 3 years ago. And Ukraine doesn't do well by any of those same measures. But here's the thing. Russia's taking more than 1,000 casualties a day by the latest count I heard. Russia's still largely ostracized from the world economy, or at least it's limited in its role in the world economy. No Western firms are investing in Russia, and a flat GDP is nothing to brag about when you're starting with about a $12,000 a year per capita income. So I think Putin does have some incentives to stop if indeed he can reintegrate Russia into the world economy to some extent with any ceasefire deal. I think we have to be willing to lift some sanctions, even if Russia's still sitting on Ukrainian territory. That's going to be the dilemma for Western policymakers, because I think Putin's going to need those positive incentives to complement the negative incentives of losing people by a continued war, if there's going to be any chance he'll change his mind. Vladimir Putin has a lot of tolerance for other people's pain, including his own soldiers. So it's not going to be easy to push him to peace.
And it's helpful for you to lay it out that way, because the other thing that, we're told to listen for is if we had to actually, if a ceasefire is not agreed to, if to your point, this is a lot of theater on his part, but not anything of substance, then do sanctions have to be sort of ratcheted up or used more aggressively in order to bring them back to the bargaining table? And is the Trump administration willing to do that?
I think you answered your question just the way you put it. And I think what I would say is, President Trump, congratulations on a good start, but you're at risk of being outmaneuvered by Vladimir Putin, and you don't want to be played. So I don't think Russia's doing something just for show. I think they are tactically trying to play for time. At least that would be my worry and my expectation. So we've got to be very wary about that. And as you say, be willing to tighten the pressure if they don't stop fighting. At the same time, we offer relief if they do.